everyone has different, for example, risk appetite. Like not many people even know about the risk appetite of their own. Sometimes it's not really just about the ability to take risk. It's also the willingness to take risk as well.
Welcome back to Marketing Made Iconic. Today's guest has one of the most extraordinary founder journeys I've come across, from architect to IT specialist to quant fund manager to buyer's agent and wealth strategist. Rasti Vaibhav is the founder of Get Rare Properties and the author of Property Wealth Blueprint. Over the first 7 years, he's built his own multi-property portfolio and then helped more than 500 families do the same, using data science, financial expertise, and something just as powerful, belief. So in this episode, Rasti will share his story of transformation, why most Aussies stop at 1 or 2 properties, and how clarity and strategy can fast-track your path to real wealth if you're willing to think differently. Rasti, your story is pretty powerful example of what happens when someone chooses growth at every crossroads. So let's start at the beginning and tell us a little bit about the early days, from architecture to IT to finance. How did all those pivots shape the work you do now?
Well, thank you so much. First of all, really a great shout out to you for having me on the show today, Valisha. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, look, it's when I've always been passionate about properties. I've always felt that property is a most tangible form from the academics point of view. It's like a function versus form. So I've always been passionate about properties. So that's why I choose to become an architect. It's just that, like, of course, in architecture, you learn about the design, the perception of the space, not just the square area. Like that's a statistics, but how you feel, how you perceive the space, all of that, like really makes a property a beautiful, more functional, more for usage, if I may say that. So that knowledge really helps me today, what I'm doing when it comes to picking the right property, because it's really about the emotions. Like lots of people say property is about property. It's brick and mortar. Well, of course it is. But at the end of the day, it's actually about the people who like to live in, people who like to perceive themselves, who really want to build memories for their family and whatnot. So it's about the perception. It's about the visualization. It's about, the perspective. So architecture knowledge really helps me do that. I actually had to change my career because of the needs of the family. Then I moved into data science and learned programming. But now, when you're really investing in properties, like a lot of people make a mistake, they want to buy in their backyard as a property that they can go and visit themselves, and it's in the same city or same set of suburbs. But in reality, money is money. And there are 15,400 plus suburbs in this country. And my argument is that if you're really talking about investing, let the data dictate that way you should be buying based on the supply and demand, not just the supply and demand as of today, but what is the change in those supply and demand looks like in future, because we are buying for the future. So understanding that data, the economic background and whatnot is really very data intensive. So my degree, master's in computer science with a focus on data science, really helps me pick the right market to really go and pick the right market which is about to take off compared to the hot suburb as of today. So that's where it really helps me to pick the right market. And my work in the finance industry, whereby it's all about risk, all about strategy, really helps me think about bringing that element where we as a fund manager were applying on a multi-billion-dollar funds, we can apply on the household funds, because it's more dear actually to the person who has limited funds or resources. We have to really apply the same set of elements. So here we go. So architecture, IT, and finance all together, though they felt very disconnected at that point of time. When I look back, probably that was the best combination I could ever imagine for.
The full plethora.
Yeah.
You had a hairy, audacious goal to retire in 10 years. Where did that mindset come from?
No, great question. So I'm a firm believer of law of attraction. There's a book as well by the name of The Secret. And what it really means is that what you can perceive, what you can believe in, it will, and you really believe and you focus on those things, think the universe will actually manifest itself to make it happen. And so that's what I actually believed in, that yes, if it is possible, and as you said, it's a hairy, audacious goal. Like when you start believing that goal, first of all, we have to have I guess, the vision to have that kind of a goal. Second, then the belief in that goal, and then really let the universe make it happen. But you know what? It's not just about the planning, it's really about the action and execution as well. So a lot of people have come across, they might be having that kind of a hairy, audacious goals, but do they really believe in that? Are they really actually acting on it? So for me, it was really about the law of attraction. The series actually, or the episode that I saw on Netflix, or not really Netflix then, but it was more of a YouTube thing that I actually saw then, followed by
Yeah,
the
yeah. Yeah, I think there's a few different pieces that need to come together, and you've got to have that dream and you've got to have that goal, but then you need to know the steps and the strategy to get there. Hey, what
exactly right.
what was your biggest breakthrough moment on the path to building your own wealth?
I think the biggest breakthrough would be that I don't need to figure it out on my own, rather than
Mm.
thinking that, oh, okay, how do I go about approaching this? Why don't I go to the people who have already done it successfully? Maybe they have made mistakes or they've learned from the mistakes. I don't need to commit to those mistakes on my own when the resources are so limited. So for me, it was more about picking the right mentors, picking the right network around it, that all of a sudden it seems that my goal is not really hairy at all. I mean, it's not really hairy audacious goal at all. It's just a
Yeah.
very norm. So it's your network, it's your net worth kind of philosophy, Alicia.
Yeah, I like that. And I think about expanders in terms of people that can inspire and expand your thinking. You talk about treating property investment like a business, not a gamble, and you've built a strategy driven system to prove it. What's wrong with the way most people approach investing, and why do they stop at one or two properties?
Now, great question, Alicia. So my take is that lots of people tend to think about, yes, property is a great investment tool, which I totally agree with that. But when we really talk about the real goal that they have is to basically somehow to have money for their retirement or the security, think about the passive income. And my argument is that one or two properties are not even close to what they should
Yeah.
be doing, right? So first of all, that they need to have the need to think about a lot more beyond than just one or two properties. So that's first challenge is more about the mindset around it, that
Hmm.
whether do they really aspire to do that or not. And it really comes down to taking a step back, thinking about what they are really doing. And then there's a need for money eventually that they need to have in the future. So the challenge is that we are not really told much about the financial literacy in our traditional school system. So probably topic for the other day, but it really comes down to why they can't really do it is first of all is the belief that A, they can do it, B, that they really need to do it as well. But more importantly, when they really understand they need to build a portfolio, it's like knowing that is the strategy is required first, right? It's like building a tower. The analogy that I'll talk about is if somebody needs to have six properties, let's say six floors in a building, rather than going and rushing into putting the first floor today and coming back later on, putting the next floor on top of it, we really need to take a step back and think about the whole design of that building on paper and laying down the right foundation and then going about executing the first floor construction, if that makes sense. So it's having that belief, having that design first, think about the life, the need of it, and then
Mm.
once we understand the pros and cons, and that's where the business mindset is required, that every decision we are making should be based on the cost and the benefits, not on the emotions.
That's a really good analogy. I think it's a way for everyone to really understand. People get that you are not going to build a building floor by floor. Like it does happen floor by floor, but there's a full plan of all six floors before we execute on anything. And I think people can't really build wealth off of one or two properties. It's got to be
No, I'll,
bigger than that.
I'll
Or
probably say like people can build wealth on one or two properties, but to me the risk element goes too high, and the wealth we're really talking about, the quantum of is probably not to the liking that we really
yeah,
need to have in the future. So even one or two
yeah,
properties is good compared to nothing, but if it done
yeah.
properly, I guess I would also argue that when we think about the portfolio, the risk actually comes down overall.
Can you walk us through your GPS style approach to helping clients build property portfolios?
No, awesome, for sure. So it really comes back with the mindset around that we should be starting with end in mind. So it's what are we trying to achieve? Just like in the example of metaphor, we talked about the building, like we talked about the 6-story building. But in reality, we are really talking about how much wealth we want to make. So GPS is
Mm.
really about the framework where we are saying that, okay, let's start where you really want to end up. If I pick my GPS, it's like, what's my destination? Then,
Yeah.
of course, my GPS is smart enough for it to pick it out, what my current position is. And now we really need to make sure that how we can go from point A, which is now, to point B, where we really want to get there. And of course, everyone is different, though the GPS is the same. So knowing where we are to where we want to go and how do we go about bridging the gap or covering that distance is what the GPS is about. Now, I might also add that the GPS might be the same, the starting point and the ending point might be the same, but it really also comes down to the preferences in the GPS. For example, somebody might like to go with a scenic route. Somebody might go and take a toll road to go there faster. So then the personal
Yeah.
preference comes into play, and that defines the most optimal pathway. What it also does, rather than coming on the crossroads and getting confused, rolling down the window down and asking where should I turn left or turn right, now the GPS very simply says that, hey, turn left, and that's what we're going to do if you understand the GPS model and we believe in the GPS. So my strategy of building wealth through properties is nothing but the GPS framework, whereby we're understanding where we really want to end up, what sort of timeline we're talking about, where we are today, and then understanding the constants like the risk appetite, the borrowing capacity, the savings plans, and the like, and then trying to work it out the long-term plan. And once we understand like how we'll probably reach to the goal, what's the best next step today to make it happen?
I love your analogies. It's like moving from current state to future state or desired state, but then injecting individual preferences in along the road on the way. It sounds like a very bespoke, custom approach.
Yes, it is. And to that point, like everyone is different. Everyone has different, for example, risk appetite. Like not many people even know about the risk appetite of their own. So my background
Yes.
in work with the financial markets, that's where the risk and the strategy comes into play, because sometimes it's not really just about the ability to take risk. It's also the willingness to take risk as well.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
just on that willingness or the risk, there are two types of risk here, like risk of investing, which we can really go and quantify and try to embrace them or mitigate them. But there's also the risk of not reaching to the goal. So we really need to have the right balance. And that's really comes down to the bespoke modeling that we do to help them understand what's the right way to get there.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you highlighted previously to me the surprising stat that people will probably find interesting, that less than 3% of buyers use a buyer's agent, and yet sellers have professional support through our real estate that we know 98% of the time. So why do you think buyers still hesitate to engage professionals when purchasing property?
No, great question. So I think it's just the norm here in this country, Australia, whereby going through a professional buyer's agent is a choice rather than the norm. So if you go elsewhere in the
Yeah.
world, say US or the UK, the brokerage is included in the transaction on both sides for the seller as well as the buyer built already in the system. However, here, the buyer is already, I guess, it's such an optional fees that they have to pay, or they have to really ask for the help of the professional buyer's agent. So until recently, it was very much limited to the luxury properties or for overseas investors. But
Yeah.
now, with the way of education and for last, say, I guess, 7 to 8 or 10 years, the buyer's agency industry is popping up. So it's really about the awareness that buyers need to have. And probably I would say the same argument that why a seller should go to the sales agent to sell the property, which is nothing A, to make the sale happen, and B, to get the best pricing. The buyer should be going to the professional buyer's agent to really get the right property for themselves and probably at the reasonable pricing, if not the discount. So the same argument goes out there. It's just that it's not a norm here. So it's probably about the education or the lack of it that is really tempering with the statistics right now, what we're looking at.
Yeah. And what's changing in the industry right now, and how are you helping redefine what a buyer's agent can be?
Yeah, so it's really about the education and the awareness that we are trying to bring to the community by way of doing the likes of workshops and the social media posts and whatnot. But more importantly, it's really about showing the value what buyer's agent is doing, because the biggest hindrance or the objection for the buyer is that, hey, I'm already paying for the stamp duty, I'm paying for the solicitor, I'm struggling to get the deposit. And if you're talking about other set of costs involved, it's too much for a typical average buyer to take on.
Yeah.
However, it really comes down to mindset. And to me, that's where the biggest focus of our message out there is, are we really taking buyer's agency fees as a cost, or are we taking buyer's agency fees as an investment? And that just that mindset shift around it, because believe it or not, cost is not really easy for anyone. Like it's just
Yeah.
significantly out there if we talk about in absolute terms. But when we talk in terms of the relative terms, like it's only 2% of the money that you're putting in, for somebody who's putting, say, 700K out there and exposing themselves for lots of mistakes or the errors that can potentially happen, versus treating this as an investment, that 2% or so can go a long way to make it happen. And we recover that cost pretty much within a couple of months, if not already in the part of the transaction. So
Yeah.
it's about the awareness. So it's about the awareness and the mindset around it, treating this as a business. Somebody putting 700K, now putting another 15K, yes, absolute terms, it's a big amount. But as a part of the investment, when we can recoup that money very quickly or even get the right negotiated price, maybe a bargain of more than 15, 20K, that fees is nothing.
Yeah. When you make the right decisions or a better decision, potentially.
And also the faster decision. There's a lot of analysis
Yes.
paralysis for the buyers that they really keep thinking about and they don't really act. And in the rising market, even a month or two delay puts them back. So it's really about saving the time, saving the stress, making sure that it's the right investment and buying it well. Because professionally, when we have bought so many properties, we have got better and better by every purchase, but also the confidence in the network that we have built around it, that makes it a very spacious role.
Yeah. And how do you differentiate get rare properties from others in this increasingly crowded space?
Yes. Look, by the way, I love the crowded space because that actually helps with the awareness. But how do we go about
Totally.
differentiating is that we are not just a typical traditional buyer's agent by itself.
Yeah.
Of course, a buyer's agent role, which again, I love what the community is doing as a buyer's agency out there. We as a buyer's agent go out there in the market, buy the right property at the right place for the right price. This actually works very well when the person or the buyer knows exactly what they want.
Mm.
And to us, it's not a one-off transaction. Like we talked about the GPS, where we are to where we want to go. Typically, the goal is of the financial freedom, for example, getting 100K passive income per year. And you and I know it, one or two properties will not get us there. So yes, as a buyer's agent, we can go and execute that purchase, but our goal is to assist the family to build the wealth or build that portfolio to help them go reach their goals sooner. So our way of differentiating is that we are not just a traditional, typical buyer's agent. We are coming as a wealth strategist. We
Yeah.
are designing the whole a GPS for them, or the whole journey, or the whole blueprint for them. And then we execute as a buyer's agent to go and buy our property as of now. But then we also give the whole support around it. Like, for example, building the team around it. As buyer's agency or buying a property is not a one-man show. We have to really have the team around, like the mortgage broker, accountant, property manager, and the like. So we can go and assist them build a whole team around it, and then go execute as a buyer's agent to buy our property. But then beyond that, we actually give them the ongoing support that we are always there as a consultant, as a friend, because they want to build a portfolio. We want to help them build a portfolio. So it really becomes more of a partnership in a way, because more they succeed, more we are successful as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I know you've helped over 500 families build strategic portfolios, and many of them started small. I'd love to hear one of those stories. Can you share a specific example, like that young couple from Western Sydney, and what made their journey successful?
Sure. First of all, I'll talk about that couple, that what sort of inhibition that they had, because this is where most of us are sitting. It's very easy for anyone to say, hey, where they've reached and looking at and getting overwhelmed. But the key thing is understanding just the normal inhibitions. Okay, A, property is not for me. How do I go about investing? Its market is different. So it's really about the education and the mindset around it, first of all. So we worked with Peter and Eve, like working on understanding where they are, where they really want to be, because they were actually stuck in the analysis paralysis. They were so much confused. They really knew that they have to do something, but still did not know what to do. So first for us, we actually sat with them after running some master classes that we do on a regular online basis. And when we sat up with them, we understood what the innovations were. So we worked out the plan again, rather than overwhelming, like how much they should be buying for. And we really talked about the risk appetite and the borrowing capacity. So starting with only one property, but of course the design has to be for the long one. So it comes with the inspiration, but they don't need to commit, or anyone working with us, they do not need to commit, go through the whole journey with us. So it's only one
Mm.
step, but with the whole strategic view. So eventually they bought one very quickly with us, and then they realized the ease of buying the property. They were looking at the reports that what we were providing in a very transparent way, and they could see the genuinity that we are bringing to them with the data and the information. Then after 3 months, they realized, oh, maybe we should go again, because there was a goal for them. And then
Yeah.
after another 4 months, they went again. So very quickly, they bought 3 properties in 7 months, whereby they
Wow.
were tipping toeing for 2 years prior to that, thinking about it. But all of a sudden, having the right team, they were able to achieve 3 properties in 7 months very quickly.
That's awesome. What challenges do clients face normally around things like borrowing capacity and long-term scaling?
Now, great question. Great questions. For a couple like this, they were like, okay, I want to build more, buy more. But then we need to be appreciative of the constraints, one of them being the borrowing power. And of course,
Yeah.
the other one is the equity, that where would they get the cash or the equity for the next one. So we can resolve on the second part by buying it well, that if we buy the right property today, give it some time, there might be some equity. But really comes down to the borrowing power, because that's really a constraint that we need to really navigate very carefully. But just like in GPS system we talk about, it's like before we hit the wall, we need to already deviate ourselves out. So it's not like we have already hit our wall of borrowing capacity. We need to be mindful. So we have to have the right professionals around us. So the way we have worked out is like working with the right mortgage broker partners who believe in the relationship and building the portfolio, rather than just the transaction of getting a loan through. So that's one part. Then second part is that sometimes when bank is saying no in terms of that can't lend you more, it's probably for your own good as a buyer, because it means that the community or the government or the rules doesn't allow them to over leverage too hard, too quick. So having that right portfolio, having that quality portfolio, and treating this as a business, the banks actually appreciate that, hey, this is done very properly. So they are actually easy to loosen up the loan for them as well. So it's really about understanding what banks look at, and then how do we go about building the quality in that portfolio. It's not the quantum of buying 2 or 3 or 7 properties, 8 properties. It's really about having the right structure, having the right accountants around it, the brokers that can really build that, I guess, the strong case that can be presented with the right broker to the bank to get the loan through. So my
Yeah.
take, Alicia, on that is that, and I'm sure, like, I'm just sharing my opinion here. So
Go for
not to
it.
be quoted this way, but I believe that there's always a loan there. There might be few banks might say no, but there will be always a lender who's happy to lend. But of course, based on the risk appetite and based on the risk the bank is taking, the interest rate might be a bit higher to your liking. So effectively, it's not
Yeah.
really a problem of the loan or the borrowing capacity. It's really about the risk appetite and the interest rates. And when the interest rates are slightly higher or a bit higher, that's where people, the buyer should really back off that, hey, do not want to pay this much interest. So effectively, it's not really a problem of borrowing power. It's a problem of the cost of borrowing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so, how do you help clients move from getting their first property to their eighth? Take us a little more through that process.
Yeah, look, that's really very subjective to the situation, the conditions, and we really need to think about the different structuring around it, like buying in, for example, trust, buying in super, and buying it in the way that banks are happy to lend. But more importantly, they have the capacity to take on the cash flow requirement that the portfolio of 8 properties would require. So it's really having that kind of buffer, first of all, and having the right structure that we can get the loan through. but also seeing the value of the portfolio growing as well, because that's when we see that, hey, we are moving very quickly, building that wealth that we have always aspired for, brings that motivation and the momentum building up. What really stops people to go beyond few properties to further is really about the cash flow, the risk buffers, and the borrowing power. So we have to really resolve one thing at a time. But having the right structure, for example, buying in trust, if it is a positive portfolio or a positive self-sustaining property in the trust, lots of banks do not really take that into account when cultivating the borrowing power. So it's really about thinking through like how much is the total portfolio they want to build, and then buying it in the right structure, because it's also what I found, like lots of people hearing this, that buying trust allows them to keep buying more, comes with its own cost as well. So that's what we really talk about, the strategy, that how we are building it up, what are the pros and cons. Let's build a business case around it. Things like, should I pay 20% deposit? Should I pay 10%? So all of that really comes down to the speed they want to go through. But should I pay toll to get there faster or not?
Yeah. And what's the payoff later?
Exactly right. So it's really work out the payoffs, think about the cost and the benefit, and see whether it is for you or not. That comes down to your risk appetite and also the risk of not getting there as well.
Yeah. Beyond the numbers, really love that your work has a deeper mission, one that's rooted in your own life story, which you talked about, and in giving back. And you said to me, this work is your gift to the community. What drives you to keep doing this at scale?
No, thank you for the question. Look, I'm coming from very humble beginnings. My parents struggled to put food on the table. And I realized that, yes, money is powerful, but to me, I've seen the dearth or the lack of it. And we all have our own passions of doing things, and whether it's traveling around, spending time with the family. But the thing is that the need of the money and the sustaining the family makes us do things like a job to just get the money flowing through.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is that and there's quite a few things that we really want to do with a lot more passion, but money becomes more of a requirement that actually stops them or enables them to do what they really want to do. So what I realized that if the money problem is solved, then a lot of people out there would be following and pursuing their own passion, and maybe more good for the community. So I'm not saying that they quit their job and do nothing, but it's like following their own passion. So for me, that has always been the passion to really to do what I really want to do. And now the passion that I've defined over the period of time is that, can I really help other person to live the life of their own passion, the life by design for them? So that really gets me going. And of course, they're all great noble causes out there people like to do. So by assisting them in the journey of getting the passive income, I believe that I'm helping them to achieve what they really want to do. So that really gets me out of the bed every day. And that's where we are here for.
Yeah, I love it. And I know you've created this financial freedom for yourself. How do you now help others create it for themselves and help them do it faster?
Yeah, that's where exactly the whole property wealth blueprint comes into play. What we have found is that wealth can be created in multiple ways. Property is just one of the ways. And of course, I'm not saying this is the only way. So people should be really diversifying as well, thinking about what they should be doing the best. But the reason why I like property, after especially being a fund manager on my own and having invested in multiple assets classes before, what I found in property is that because of the leverage involved, there's a kind of a business where money is an important part of the whole thing to get started, but it's not a huge quantum out there. So property being the vehicle that one can choose to pick as a tangible asset that they can add value. It's a very inefficient market. And what it means is that you can go and find properties and bargain by proper research. So there's a very good way for any average family to go out there, start buying properties. But it's not just about buying the property. It's like, how do we go about scaling it up to the level that it can replace our passive income? Sorry, they can go and replace our active income, effectively making it a passive income that they can live off with the money that they're getting in. So that's what really our focus is, that if we can help someone to go have the clarity of the pathway, and sometimes it's not just about the destination alone, Alicia, it's also about the journey that they're taking on. If I know on this path I'll get there, there's a peace of mind and the humbleness that it can bring out there. It's amazing. So that's how we are helping. We are building them the pathway and then helping them execute to be on that pathway and get there on the other side.
Yeah. So let's close out with some wisdom from someone who's walked the long road and found freedom on the other side. If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
I love that question. I think the thing that I would say is that never be limited by your own belief. So open up the horizon, look up like what other people are achieving, and then see if anything resonates with them. Because when we are part of a group or a class, we tend to follow the status quo, but that
Yeah.
inhibits our own thinking, our belief. So if you look up and that what people are able to achieve, it can be you, the next person out there. So open up the belief, having that clarity that yes, you can get there is the biggest thing I would have told myself.
That's the same advice I would give younger me as well. And what's one thing listeners should start doing today if they want to build long-term wealth?
So the one thing that they should be doing is educating themselves, because sometimes you do not know what you don't know until you know it. So the whole idea is keep yourself surrounded by the people who have done it successfully, maybe have made some mistakes on the way, but learn from them. But education, the podcast, what you're doing, what you're bringing to them as an example is the thing that they should keep doing it. But the sorry truth is that listening or learning is not good enough. They have to have the set goal for themselves that, okay, by end of this financial year or by end of this calendar year, they need to do something. And then set that goal, make it a SMART goal, like specific, measurable, achievable, realistic,
Achievable.
and timely, and then work it backwards for that. And
Yeah.
that's what I'll be saying to them.
Awesome. And what does the next decade look like for you?
Yeah, so we have helped 500 plus families. So now we are in the business of scaling up, reaching out to more people. So next decade would be more around like, how can I really make it 10 times of that? So how can I really help 5,000 people, not just 500, 5,000 in next 10 years, what I'm looking at, Alicia.
Expand that community.
Yeah, expand that community, bring
Yeah.
those more passionate people who are doing it more successfully for themselves and for their family. And yeah, if I can achieve that or close to that, I'll be very happy.
That would be great. Rasti, thanks for joining us and for sharing your story so generously today. From your early career pivots to helping 500 plus families and more transform their financial future, it's clear that strategy, belief, and service are at the heart of everything you do. So, for listeners who want to learn more or work with you, where's the best place to find you?
Beautiful. So I'm very much on social media, call it LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. But the best resources would be more on the website, getrare.com.au. We do run regular masterclasses, which are almost done on a weekly basis, talking about the philosophy, the GPS framework, and the likes. Most welcome to check them out.
Awesome. If today's conversation sparked something in you, please share it, subscribe, because the difference between one property and a life of freedom, it's usually strategy, not luck. Until next time, thanks for tuning in to Marketing Made Iconic.